Yes, friends, guest time has re-arrived. Because last week you heard me shout into the void for 4 of the 5 days on free agency stuff, and then we did a July 4th mailbag show. But this week, we've got guests every single day of the week. And I will start. We will begin with the great Dan Titus. I wanted to get him on as fast as humanly possible. I did like a 20-second intro there because when Dan's, we got to do a show with Dan Palio also, so we can just max out the Dans on a pod. But welcome back from your semi-vacation, question mark?
Semi-vacation. Yeah, it's always a semi-vacation when you got kids involved, but still enjoyed the time off nonetheless, and definitely co-sign a D3 experience here on the Old Man Squad pod.
That's right. It's a D3. I like that a lot. Add Dan Titus if you want to give him a follow over on social media. Dan, of course, is with Yahoo Sports. And by the way, I should have asked this before we went on air. Like, we were talking about when Yahoo leagues may be coming around again, and you have a rough idea on that?
That's right. I think the tentative date is around early August 8th. Don't quote me on that, but it's going to be around that time frame. But really excited to get into fantasy basketball drafting as early as possible for those that don't want to play fantasy football. And even if you are, you can still mock draft fantasy basketball too. So I'm sure me and Dan will have an unhealthy amount of drafts going down around that early August time frame.
That is amazing, because if that does turn out to be the day, and I didn't want to like box you in on anything here, but you're the inside man on this stuff. That's 1 month.
Yeah, man.
That's a month from today.
We're going to be drafting. We got Summer League. We got the Olympics. We got drafting.
Oh, my goodness. That is music to my ears, because you follow NBA stuff throughout the offseason. You've got the playoffs, but that's not fantasy relevant. You've got the draft, which is, and you've got free agency, which is, and then you got this like window on either side where you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs going, I got some stuff I can talk about, but do I like I just really want leagues to open up again. So you heard it, friends. You can start the countdown, roughly semi countdown. Dan's semi back from vacation. Anyway, welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, everyone. I'm Dan Besbris. He's Dan Titus. Yes, we're doing Dan's, and I'm doing Dan jokes on today's show as well. They're all terrible, so just sit back and relax. It's dad humor. Dan, the main topic today, because last week I basically went through everything piece by piece, was going to be your favorites, your winners, your losers, whatever you're looking at, guys that maybe shifted the most in value. But then we had a pretty big thing happen over the weekend, and it feels like we'd kind of be burying the lead to jump right over the fact that DeMar DeRozan is now a member of the Sacramento Kings. I haven't said a single word about this on the show yet because, I mean, it was going to be kind of like the opener on Monday, but you're my opener on Monday. So what are your thoughts? Like, we knew the Kings were going to be some kind of player in this. They've been linked to Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan, and it seems like DeMar was the guy that came through. Rather than just asking you the big, broad, open-ended question, let me try to pare it down a little bit, because I've seen the internet really fighting each other on this one. Is this a good fit, or is this a bad fit for Sacramento? Or is it somewhere in between, potentially?
I mean, I think that this makes Sacramento a playoff team. So if that's your floor, you're getting better. And from my perspective, like, I feel like DeMar DeRozan is one of those players that isn't really going to make a huge impact in terms of the players around him. Like, he's not a great shot creator. I mean, he's not a great shot playmaker for others, but I do think that they could use his late game scoring. He already has De'Aaron Fox, one of the most clutch players in the fourth quarter. If you're talking about winning games, DeMar DeRozan is going to help. And the one question I have from fantasy is, I don't know that we're going to see the production we've seen the last couple of years because of all the injuries in Chicago and just the fit where he was the alpha and the number one option on offense. He's going to probably be number 3 now in terms of usage, which isn't great. Now, he only had a 25% usage last year, but I would expect it to probably be around that. But you're going to be giving up shots to De'Aaron Fox. Domantas Sabonis is obviously the main playmaker on that team. You also have to remember that Malik Monk is still there too. So, like, there's a lot of shots to go up there. So I'm expecting everybody to kind of suffer a little bit, but not drastically enough that I'm not going to be drafting, DeMar DeRozan as like a 5th, 6th round guy. De'Aaron Fox still, 4th rounder, and Domantas Sabonis easily still early 2nd in conversation for late 1st if you want to shore up those double doubles and potential triple doubles like last year.
Yeah, I've been kicking it around as well and trying to figure out where I land with all of this. I think, he doesn't provide floor spacing. So that's what everybody always sort of falls back on. That's the crutch, I guess, of, where does DeMar DeRozan fit in the modern NBA? He finds a way to make himself useful, and the Bulls were better for having had him. Is he the perfect fit in Sacramento? No, probably not. But he's better than Harrison Barnes. So can't really argue they got worse there, right? Like, worst case scenario, they stay the same, but more than likely he makes them at least a little bit better. But like you, I'm also struggling a bit on the fantasy side because Chicago, okay, you try to like handicap what the Bulls have done the last couple years. He and Zach LaVine were kind of the 17, 18 shot per game kind of guys. And then LaVine played a handful of weeks this last year and he was done. And Kobe White kind of jumped into that spot. But in terms of like how many shots are left for DeRozan, it does feel like the number is going to be ever so slightly lower because you've also got, you didn't mention Keegan Murray is floating around there.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
You want to continue to get more involved.
Mm-hmm.
So my big issue is, and this is the near impossible question for us until you get to day one, but it is the one we have to make our calls on. Yeah, he takes a step back. He's probably not going to be, a top 40 or better DeMar DeRozan, which he has been for checks watch like a decade and a half.
It's been a while.
But he also gets drafted 20 slots later than he finishes every single year. So does that number fall down? Does ADP fall from 50 down to 70 and he still can beat it? Or like, do you think he still gets drafted near 50 even on a new team? Because now you create like razor's edge of value there for him. Suddenly he goes from easy, I like to do baseball metaphors with these guys, like nice, easy single the opposite way on draft night. If his ADP doesn't fall, then now you're starting to cut it pretty close, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't see how his ADP doesn't fall. And I think he is probably going to perform closer to his value, right? Like the last few seasons, I would consider him a value, just considering how many games he played and the production that you got as a result of that. Yeah, I'd say he's probably going to be closer to his real life finish, which would probably be in that 60-70 range.
Yeah.
Because he is an efficient guy. He just doesn't really help you in 3-pointers and stocks that much. But I don't know. Mike Brown's a good defensive mind. Maybe we'll see a little uptick in his defensive efforts there. Capable on-ball defender, good size for the position. So I don't know. I feel like DeMar DeRozan could still have those efficiency numbers. It's just a matter of like, what else are we going to see? Like, can he maintain a 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists? I don't know if it's going to be that high with so many other mouths to feed.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am with that one as well. My hope is that, like you said, the ADP falls with it and creates another, 20 slot value. We just can't really know until after, as you mentioned, August 8th or later. I know. I'm going to keep going back to that one. Quickly here before we get to your free agency winners and losers. What do you think about what's left behind now in Chicago? Because they've moved Caruso for Giddey, which sort of bringing in more usage than they sent out on that one, but not having DeRozan back, that opens up a lot. But does Zach LaVine come back and slide into basically what DeRozan was doing, or can they get out from under that contract? Bulls are a tornado right now.
I mean, that's the one thing is like, I was going to say that the winner right now for the Chicago Bulls is probably Zach LaVine because he's like the most not untradeable asset in the NBA apparently right now between the contract or the injuries. They just can't find a home for him. So if he stays and they're stuck with him, that's a great situation for fantasy. Probably one of the best situations for him in a long time, not having to share the ball with being like a 1B with DeMar DeRozan there. So the other person I'd come to is Pat Williams, which I'm not excited about at all because he's really just a 10.4 rebound guy. And even with DeMar DeRozan and LaVine off the court, that only really went up to like 12 points, 5 rebounds. So I'm not expecting a substantial jump from him, but he's a good 3-and-D guy. He shoots over 40% from 3. He can get you stocks. That's valuable in fantasy. So I still see him last year he was definitely a pick outside the top 100. He could fall in well into that top 100 just for sheer opportunity alone if they decide not to make any additional moves.
Do you think DeMar cuts into anybody's stuff in Sacramento?
Initially, I was thinking Keegan Murray. I just feel like he's an unselfish player already. He's a catch and shoot guy. I was hoping to see him with the ball in his hands more, but I feel like getting DeMar DeRozan, a non-floor spacer, and guy that needs a 25% usage rate is probably going to come into somebody. It's got to be Keegan Murray. But I still feel like Keegan Murray can have an efficient season. It's just going to be on lesser volume. So maybe we see him act as if like a Mikal Bridges of old, where he's just not seeing much usage rate, but he can still contribute in other ways that makes him valuable for fantasy.
Awesome. Talking to Dan Titus of Yahoo Fantasy Sports. Dan, who was, and maybe there isn't a number one, but screw it. I'm going to ask the question the way I want to. Who was your favorite? That's a dumb way to phrase it. Who do you think is the fantasy player that is benefiting the most during free agency? Who's on your list?
This answer is not gonna. It's probably not gonna. It may not age well, but like I feel like in the current standings, like it has to be this dude. It's Cam Thomas, because like who the hell else is left to play offensive basketball for the Brooklyn Nets right now?
Nobody.
Cam Johnson, he dealt with injuries, never really been an alpha. But like if you look at Cam Thomas's numbers, dude had a 30% usage rate last year. He shot the most opportunities in Brooklyn because Mikal Bridges was seemingly viewed as a 1A option when he really wasn't that. And now that he's gone, there's a lot of shots to give up. So I love him. Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton, I think, are both winners here just because they don't have a lot of depth behind them. So I feel like from a backcourt standpoint, this guy's going to be running the offense way more. I think we could see an uptick in his assists. And he has shown some playmaking abilities toward the end of the season. So I think they're going to invest in him as potentially one of their cornerstone pieces. We'll see. This is his audition to do that. And then on the front court side, you got Nick Claxton, who literally is battling no one for boards and that double-double. So, yeah, I really like Cam Thomas here. And frankly, I'm probably going to overdraft him just because people are scared off of the inefficiency. But I'll take that volume any day of the week. I think it's going to be a way better version of what we saw last year from Jordan Poole.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. So a little more on the Cam Thomas thing, because I like to explore stuff like this. He's a guy that does have, as you mentioned, some efficiency issues. Field goal percent was a negative for him last year. Not colossal. Like we definitely came across worse last couple months of the year when he was taking 20 shots a game. He was around 45%, which is not good, but also not backbreakingly bad. You know, you can cover that up with one decent big man. But what he doesn't do, he doesn't get much in the way of defensive stats. And so he doesn't rebound very much. The assists will probably be better because they just kind of have to be if you have the ball in your hand the whole time. But there are these sort of quiet holes in his fantasy game that make his overall rank a little lower. But then you kind of get into that head-to-head roto thing. Like if you're punting any of those three things that I mentioned, his value jumps. So my question, I guess, I'm trying to think of the sort of the right way to frame it. What is the ceiling, you think, for Cam Thomas? Because again, this past year when he was taking 20 shots a game, he was at 25, 4, and 4, which is decent, but no steals, no blocks, bad field goal percent. So his rank was like 75. How does he push that number ahead? What are you looking for in terms of jumps for him?
It's definitely keeping the turnovers down. But I think that's just a necessary evil when you have the ball in your hands more. So that's not gonna go away. Looking at his field goal percentage, though, he did have a couple of bad months, but for the most part, he was around that 45, 46 range, which I think if you're using him as like your third or fourth guard, that's fine. You know, you're going to be getting potentially 23 points. I mean, I think his points are going to go up. You could average like 24, 25 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. That's enough production for me in category leagues to warrant being drafted as I would say maybe, I think 7th, 8th round is probably a bit rich, but I think it's going to make that argument a lot easier once we get closer to training camp and we don't see any other additional movements from the Brooklyn Nets. This is really just a usage play. There's not many people you're going to find. Like, I hate to compare him again to Jordan Poole, but
but you're going to do it, damn it.
But I'm not saying we're taking Poole last year in the 4th, 5th round. I'm talking about taking him in the 7th and 8th, and you're going to get that level of production in that spot. Like, he could be a top 70 player if those efficiency metrics improve just slightly, and you get maybe up to a steal a game. Yeah, that would be fine for fantasy, and that's all I'm looking for. And right now, I think average he was 0.7 last year.
Yeah, something like that. So not too terribly far off. Yeah. I guess then, do you think someone who's set to score that much, do you think he falls to 75, or do you think the hype train might push him up to this year's Jordan? Like, what if he starts getting drafted at 50? Yeah. Would you still do it?
Probably not, because I feel like that's overreaching. But I don't really see too many people that are going to be interested in wanting to invest in Brooklyn Nets players, just because like this roster is just so, I don't know, it's just so bleak. The depth, they're apparently going to be interested in trading more assets. Like they're trying to get off Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe Ben Simmons. There's a sign and trade opportunity there. I don't really see the market for it, but who knows? This team could look vastly different in a complete rebuild. And if you have one steady component to that is Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton, I'd be all in on those two guys and probably nothing more.
Who's next on the Titus list? Who else did you like during free agent or dislike? There might be someone that you hated what happened to him.
I actually like DeJounte Murray's landing spot because I don't think the New Orleans Pelicans are done yet. And I know initially I tweeted that, I think that DeJounte Murray can sustain a 25% usage rate, 25-5 stat line. And this was before, the Pelicans decided to trade Brandon Ingram. We're still waiting on that domino to fall, but I think it's going to happen. The question I have is, like, is it going to be CJ McCollum to go with him? Like, what other possible movements can they make? Because the Pelicans have the unique, awesome problem of having really good players that are coming off the bench, or it could be in their starting lineup that need more of an opportunity to shine. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. And so with DeJounte Murray, I think CJ McCollum did a fine job manning that point guard spot, but he's not a true point guard. He's more of a combo guard, always benefited better in that two guard slot. And I think with DeJounte Murray in there, when you combine his ability to run an offense, he's going to get around 5 or 6 assists. And you don't have someone like Ingram sucking up 30% of the usage there. That's going to be a pretty good opportunity for him to shine. I think we could see a better performance of DeJounte Murray, what we saw before. Well, when him and Trey played together, it wasn't great. When Trey got injured and DeJounte Murray took off to the moon, like, cool. You saw what DeJounte Murray can do. I think we could see a better version of what he was supposed to be in Atlanta, in New Orleans, because I just think it's a better schematic fit for him where he's not having to share the ball with a ball-dominant guard like Trey Young, whereas he should be able to take the reins in New Orleans.
So let's say you had a pretty early draft, August 9th per se. I'm gonna keep doing this to you, by the way. And nothing has happened yet for the Pelicans. Let's say hypothetically you come around to early August, they haven't moved anybody yet. Would you feel comfortable? Because DeJounte's probably gonna have a lower ADP as long as everybody's there. Mm-hmm. Would you feel comfortable drafting him and saying, I think someone's still going to get moved, and trying to sort of pre-plan for that? Or is that just too much of a dice roll with someone you'll probably still have to draft like around 45 to 50 range? Like, is that a risk you're willing to take? I'm probably scared off of it, but I'm also, old man fantasy basketball.
Gotta play to the brand, my man.
I know. Although I did it with Harden last year. I took Harden in a ton of spots.
So, but I think he would qualify as an old man, as part of the old man squad right now.
He's grumpy enough. That's for sure.
Because you get disgruntled, grumpy old man. So I feel like DeJounte Murray is probably going to be pretty content with the situation that he's in. Atlanta was a fringe playoff team, play-in team, frankly, and now he's on a team that certainly has the pedigree and the talent to succeed and at least be a mid seed in the Western Conference if they're healthy. I would be okay with taking DeJounte Murray early with the contingency that Brandon Ingram may or may not be traded. That could hurt. if Ingram ultimately isn't moved, but I think that he will, just with reading all the tea leaves and the cap situation that they're going to have. Potentially trying to hoard in all this younger talent that they're going to have to pay for very soon. That Trey Murphy extension's coming up, Herb Jones as well. They're going to need to pay out the young guys first. So I think they're going to make it a point to get rid of Ingram as soon as they can.
What do you think the DeJounte Murray move means for those remaining in Atlanta?
Ooh, I mean, Dyson Daniels intrigues me if he can figure out his shot. But like, I think Dyson Daniels had a pretty good fantasy out. He had a fantasy run for some time there. I remember picking up in a couple of leagues, and his stocks are just crazy. So from a defensive perspective, I would definitely be interested in him as like a late round flyer, assuming they don't make any other moves. But like, Atlanta's another one of those teams. Like, I feel like they have to move on for some of these guys, like DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like, both of these guys don't really fit, I feel like, where they're going. And obviously you draft Ricochet. Clint Capella's still around somehow, some way. Like, there's got to be more moves coming along. And at this point, like, if Dyson Daniels does end up staying as the starting shooting guard, I'm tempted. I'm tempted as a late round pick. But other than that, it's hard for me to get excited about too many Hawks players except Jalen Johnson. Like, he's the guy. I think this trade of DeJounte Murray only helps his playmaking potential, which we already saw a glimpse of. I think he can get to like 4 assists, potentially 3.5, 4 assists a game. I'm so excited about Jalen Johnson. Like, he's an easy, late second, third round pick for sure. But I wouldn't be mad at anyone that reached for him just for his fantasy upside.
Do you have another favorite or least favorite on your board, or do you want to talk more about Clint Capella? Because I've got plenty of questions about the Atlanta front court. I'm not being facetious here. Like, what the hell's going on there? But if you got a name, I think I'd probably rather do that. So your call on this one.
I got an old man for you.
Ooh, hit me.
Jonas Valanciunas.
Yes.
And people may not like it because, okay, they got Alex Sarr, Bagley's back. But like, if you're talking about one of the worst shooting teams in the league that had zero front court help, him going there was like the best thing for his fantasy outlook. And he's going to be cheap. No matter where he's playing at, like, Jonas Valanciunas ends up in that tier of like top 100 guys that goes after, the first 100 picks. So I wouldn't be surprised if his draft stock improves a bit. Like, Yusuf Nurkic kind of had a late steam to him as when he joined Phoenix, but I think everyone's going to be overlooking the fact that Washington's a developmental team and they're not going to be competing. His minutes may fluctuate, blah, blah, blah. But hey, this guy's going to be a walking double-double in 25 minutes. And with that amount of opportunity for him, like, he's still capable of scoring 16 points a game. So I think he's going to be one of the more slept on bigs that could definitely pay dividends for fantasy managers.
See, now you've really wandered into my wheelhouse here. You're in the Dan Besbris playpen. Because I did like 15 minutes on JV on Friday's show. And I don't think I did the thing on Twitter that I intended to because something else popped up. But like, you said 25 minutes, which is exactly what I think he's probably aiming for there.
Yeah.
I know they've got Holmes. I know they've got Bagley, but Richaun Holmes has been broken for a couple of years. We still don't really know what happened there, but all of a sudden he got monstered. And then Bagley's just never been decent, even remotely close to it. So you've got this big dude, like massive human being, that chose to go to one of the worst teams in all of basketball. And like, you got to just read the tea leaves on stuff like that. He went there to rehabilitate his value. There's no other explanation for it because we had already heard a rumor that LeBron was willing to take a pay cut for him to come to the Lakers. So this dude doesn't care about having a better shot at a championship. I don't want to say the best shot, but like, obviously Lakers better.
If you choose to Washington, we could put that to the side for the
most. Exactly. So someone in the Wizards camp was like, JV, we'll give you half the ball game. Go ham. Go like late Toronto Raptors JV where you played 22, 23 minutes and you just like took a shot every time the ball touched your hand. Because look at these guys who are going to shoot if you don't.
Yeah.
And he looked at him and he was like, oh yeah, I can shoot over those dudes. Like, I don't.
Dude, can you imagine the rebounding games that he's going to have? He's going to be like Andre Drummond last year, like 9 rebounds and 17 in 15 minutes. Like,
there's going to be so many misses.
So many misses. So many misses.
They need somebody to set screens there, which he can do. They didn't get a ton of that
Great
from
point.
their big man arsenal. And again, for me, a lot of what I do when I'm handicapping a situation like that is to say, is this guy going to be comfortable taking shots away from his teammates? And in New Orleans, the answer was no, because the guys around him were better at offense. Like, if you're going to have somebody steamrolling towards the rim, it should have been Zion on that team. On the Wizards, it's like, look, it's you or like Kuzma. Okay, fine. He's okay offensively. Or, as you've already brought up a few times, Jordan frickin' Poole. Like, you think JV is going to be like, nah, I should probably pass it out to Poole, who's standing 37 feet from the rim, and he's going to pull up from there. No, JV is going to take the hook. He's going to take the shot. So, yeah, I totally agree with you on this one. I think it's a really nice chance, and I don't think people want anything to do with him because he's old and boring. It's beautiful. Can I ask you about another old dude?
Tobias Harris is coming.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about.
Because the thing, it's funny, man, and maybe I'm just moving into geriatric stage here, but I feel like I was very hard on Tobias Harris, but he's been consistently the most boring, consistent fantasy player over the last few years. And how can you be mad at 17, 7, and 3?
You can't.
And an efficient one, too. And he's joining a Detroit team that honestly needs his leadership. Like, he's a veteran. He's going to be great for Ron Holland and Asar Thompson. And I think he's going to play 30-plus minutes. So, like, I'll take him in the late, in the back end. We're talking like round 8, round 9. Like, Tobias goes late sometimes just because everyone doesn't like him.
If somebody in my leagues lets Tobias fall to me at like pick 90, I mean, I will show up at their doorstep with a box of cookies. That's absurd. He was, while getting, even during the Harden year, when he was a lot worse at 15, 6, and 2.5 because he's so efficient. That was still top 60 in 9-cat.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy who, it's that phenomenon of just not being bad at anything. That's it. That's all you got to do. So by the way, thank you for bringing him up, because I was going to do it myself, but like,
this is going to be, I feel like this is going to be the year that we see a lot of these younger players that had a great playoff runs make this leap into second, third round territory. And it's just going to push the value of these old guys down. And we're just going to be there, just sitting there, like, collecting these infinity stones, bro. Just like, all right, cool. Old, just let them fall to me. I'll take it.
Wrinkly ass infinity stones.
Like precious.
That's right. I'll do a Gollum bit on air. That's my promise to listeners. If I collect Tobias Harris and Valanciunas, I'll come on here and I'll just do some Gollum crap. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. As I said before, and I'll ask again, can we do this every month? Because a month from now, you may have an announcement to make on the show.
I'm about to say, a month from now, we're going to be drafting here. So for sure.
Yes. He is Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports. Dan, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Dan.
I love my visits with Dan Titus. Plus, I mean, I know it wasn't like officially official, and I continued to needle him about it throughout the whole episode, but we may have Yahoo leagues in like a month, people. You can start the countdown. And here's the beauty part. I'm going to get you through the next few days with guests. You're not going to have to listen to me for, more than like 30 to 40% of the show, which is way lower than usual. And so everybody should be quite pleased about that. After this week, we will wrap up our free agency coverage. We'll go into about 2 to 3 weeks of team previews. That's what's coming up soon on the podcast. I historically have done team reviews in May, and this year I thought I would kind of flip it, because I was like, why do I want to do a team review if this said team is about to make 5 moves during free agency, and then all the work that I just did in the month of May is obsolete and out of the picture? And so I decided to switch it up this year, and I haven't fully decided if that actually was a good idea or not, but that's what I've done. And so now we've left ourselves this little window after free agency is done. So it'll be about a week from today, July 15th or so. That gives us 5, 10, or I can look at the calendar while I'm talking to you guys. The week of the 15th, week of the 22nd, the week of the 29th. Basically 3 weeks to cover the league. Do about roughly two teams per episode. We'll have some breaking news shows that pop up from time to time, and maybe that'll push off one of the team preview episodes. But that'll bring us basically right up to the opening of Yahoo leagues. And then, I mean, at that point, it's mock drafts. It's Yahoo's pre-rank board. It's ADP information. When that comes out about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, we will have all the guests coming in with their favorites, who they're looking at, who are the late grabs. That's ramp up time. So, folks, we are, after we get through this week again, which is going to be a lot of fun, talking to, I think the schedule this week, it should be Mike Barner tomorrow, Mike Catron on Wednesday, Matt Smith on Thursday, and oh no, who am I forgetting for Friday? I'm going to feel really bad when I remember. Oh, Alex Rickleen at some point this week. What did we decide on days? Yes, Rickleen. That'll be Friday. So yeah, I got this figured out. Slowly, but I got it figured out. Wow. I looping back around to the DeMar stuff too, and Dan made a lot of really good points. And the one thing that I almost want to like absolve us of here on the show to Dan's today, it's so hard to know what to do with the Bulls until we see what happens with Zach LaVine. Because right now, the removal of DeRozan, but the addition of LaVine slots him, that's what Dan just mentioned, Dan Titus, slots LaVine like right into the DeMar role. But what we saw last year, everybody's like, oh, great, DeMar's gone. So like everybody on the Bulls gets a bump. I don't think that that's true. I think it's really just Zach LaVine right now because Kobe White was alongside DeMar DeRozan and Vooch was alongside DeMar DeRozan, but not LaVine. It's that same thing. So if you just replace DeRozan with LaVine from last year, then everybody else pretty much stays the same. But you also removed Caruso, who was a high efficiency, low usage guy, with Josh Giddey, who's a higher usage guy, who's slightly lower in efficiency, and also a more traditional guard, where Caruso, yeah, I mean, probably the shooting guard, small forward, whatever, 3-and-D guy, he's gone, and you slot in more of a on-ball dude instead. So that actually makes me a little bit worried. What does that do to how much time the ball is in the hands of Kobe White or even Zach LaVine for that matter? But again, compared to last year, it pretty much couldn't get any worse. Are they going to move off of Vooch? Because if so, the starting center for that team with no Vooch is frickin' what's his nuts from Indiana last year. Old Goggles Magoo. I can't think of his name. Jalen Smith. So you got a lot that's left to shake out in Chicago. But right now, the outlook for the guard spot for Chicago is probably worse. Because everybody probably just slides up a tick, basically. You put LaVine in DeRozan's spot, and then everybody is just where they were. Like if LaVine was a shooting guard and DeMar was the small forward, and Caruso was whatever the opposite of that was, now you drop in Giddey at shooting guard. LaVine has to size up a little bit. Ayodosumo was super efficient down the stretch last year. That probably takes a hit. He was playing 36 minutes a game the last 35 games of the year. He was top 70 over that stretch. Better than Kobe White, by the way, because of the efficiency element. So Caruso out, who was playing 32 minutes a game. DeRozan out, who was playing 39 minutes a game the second half of last year. But Giddey in. They'll probably try to shoehorn him into 27 to 29 minutes. And LaVine back, who will get his 30-some-odd minutes. So they're just like, there isn't as much extra as it would appear just at a glance, because they're bringing one high-usage guy back who wasn't there last year. If you move Vooch out and run smaller, or, again, play Jalen Smith there, you take a bunch of usage and you ship it out with Vooch. That helps all these other guys. That, to me, is the thing that could really kind of turn the tables a little bit. Because for a while last year, you saw even DeMar playing the 4, which I don't think they can play LaVine at the 4. So that would probably be, remember, Patrick Williams was out the second half of last year also. So now you're talking the center, whoever that is, Patrick Williams at the 4, LaVine at the 3, And you probably got a Kobe White, Josh Giddey backcourt. Unless, is Giddey going to back up White and Dosunmu? It's a shame, too, because I really liked Io as a kind of a sleeper before they picked up Giddey. So things are a little funky in Chicago right now. But they could clear out. And then as far as Sacramento goes, again, like Harrison Barnes is taking 10 shots a game. So you send that out. You bring in a guy that's going to try to take 15. That's just not good for the guys around him. Monk is going to do less. Fox is going to do less. Keegan's going to do less. Domantas Sabonis is probably not impacted much by the DeMar DeRozan thing. And now I don't know if anybody's going to be a value in Sacramento this year. They may all get slightly overdrafted. DeMar will probably be the closest to not, just because he's boring. Anyway, let's wrap things up here on this Monday show with another big thank you to Dan Titus of Yahoo Fantasy Sports, at Dan Titus. Give him a follow over on social media. Social media. Dan, I think, also is part of the Roto World basketball show, if I'm not mistaken. So Yahoo Fantasy Sports and Roto World. Pretty good twofer right there. DANTITUS on Twitter. We'll have him back again, hopefully 1 month from today. That'd be awesome. I would love to have Dan on the show when Yahoo League's open. What a great day that would be. Make the announcement here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I know. What a time. Again, big thank you to Dan. Thank you to all of you guys who continue to watch and listen. Subscribe. Please take a moment to hit that thumbs up button if you're watching, and subscribe. And if you are listening after the fact, subscriptions, 5-star reviews, that's all a really big deal. Quick check of the chat room, by the way. Dem Bird says they got to get rid of Vooch. He's such a liability for them. It's going to come down to how much of a pride hit, I believe, Chicago's willing to take here. Because they had a chance to move Caruso last year. They didn't do it. They got less. They've pretty much moved off of DeRozan's contract expired. They got a second-round pick out of this thing. Oops. So how willing are they to just take L's on every trade they make and get what you can? Like, you trade Vooch, you can probably get a first back for him. I know the contract is not the best thing in the world, but also he's still a pretty damn competent big man. Not a terrific three-point shooter, but not bad. 19 and 11 he averaged last year. He could make a lot of teams better, significantly better, but he makes no sense for Chicago. So are they willing to not get the world's best return on him? To me, that's what this is going to come down to. If they can swallow their pride and just blow the damn thing up, then great. Let's see. Giddey surely gets mid-30s. Otherwise, what's the point? Well, so mid-30s is a lot. This last year, he played 25 as a point of reference, the second half of the year. Like, he had been basically phased out. Previous season, where he was very much a part of everything OKC was doing, he played 31, which is probably your maxing out point in Chicago. I don't think they're going to give him more than 31 minutes. Because they have guys like Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu, who frankly might end up being better than Giddey and might already be better than Giddey. They're going to give him a look for sure. And if they can get off of Zach LaVine, they might just run out a small ball lineup, which would play all three of those guys. Because Josh is not a small guard. He could play small forward and go point forward for them. It'd be a bad team. They'd lose a lot of ball games. But then, to me, the 30 is a little more guaranteed. Right now, in my mind at least, he's probably the starting point guard or shooting guard with Kobe White, and he's probably around 30, but there are also going to be games where they get blown out or do the blowing out. Seems a bit more rare. That might sag that number from 30 down to 28 and a half or something like that. Regardless, I think you could treat him as basically a guy getting starters minutes. And even in starters minutes in the past, we've seen Giddey struggle to post consistent 9-cat value anyway. So 6 of 1, half dozen. It'll come down to kind of how many shots are there. And that's going to come down again to whether Zach LaVine is still around. By the way, this is a funny post from Dem Birds. The answer to that is very willing. Chicago should be very willing to make asses of themselves. He says, make my Hawks look competent, giving John Collins away for 1 second rounder. That's true. No matter how poorly you do as an exec, you can always be like, look what the Hawks did. Someone was going to give them like 2 firsts for John Collins 2 years before, and they just kept going, no, we're going to wait this thing out. And I'm sure it's going to work out just as well with Clint Capella. All right. That's done. I like that the chat room is starting to wake up these days. I really do appreciate you guys have started to find the show over the last few days. I think free agency playing a large role in that. It is it's tugs at the heartstrings for me, frankly, when you're starting to see those first real signs of traction on the new show. So thank you all. Like, rate, subscribe. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. Roto Mike Barner on the show. I'm Dan Besbris for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and at Old Man Squad on Twitter. Give that a follow on your way out. See you mañana.